Hello and welcome to Moneylife Discussions. This is our second round. I'm Sucheta Dalal, Managing Editor of Moneylife magazine.
And I'm Mr Basu, Editor and Publisher of Moneylife.
Today we talk about two headline stories. Both of them are on entry loads charged by mutual funds. The first is the Economic Times headline of August 8th. It talks about how Sebi may plan to reintroduce entry loads. And the second is today's Business Standard, which is talking about a controversy that's happening over the decision. This is the headline for you right here. My question to Debashis, who's been on the Mutual Fund Advisory Committee during CB Bhave's time, is this unusual?
Well, in a sense, we don't know, because there is no public record of the kind of discussions that we've had when I was a member of the Mutual Fund Advisory Committee. But I certainly remember that what the Sebi was thinking, what the committee was thinking, what was being discussed, all of these things, nothing gelled with each other. For instance, the big decision that was taken to scrap the entry loads, and I remember that there was no long detailed discussion on such momentous decision. And in fact, I remember how the decision was taken. I think it was predetermined, because the chairman was present in the meeting one day, in one of the meetings, that is Mr. CB Bhave, and he asked the marketing head of UTI, I remember, very innocuously, how do you get your customers? And this marketing head very generously and helpfully said that, well, we sell it through distributors. So the chairman asked him, so they are distributors' customers, they are not your customers, right? So that led, I think, to his making up his mind. The fact that the fund companies are not making an effort, they are only incentivizing the distributors to go and procure customers at any cost. And that was the way this decision was taken, according to me.
So are you saying that there was no discussion at all on whether entry load should be scrapped in the Sebi Mutual Fund Advisory Committee?
There was very, very cursory discussion. I don't remember the mutual fund companies making any protest. The discussion was going around the distribution structure, the cost structure and so on, and it was not that there was long debates and there were two sides to it, and then eventually, okay, the house decides or we recommend kind of a process at all.
So for those who don't know what is there in these two stories, essentially the Economic Times report said that Sebi is going to reintroduce entry loads. Now entry loads is the incentive or the fee that is given to mutual fund distributors in order to get clients, and it is paid out of the investor's money. So the investor essentially pays for the entry loads. This is what was scrapped during CB Bhave's time. And what has happened since, the Business Standard story today says that the committee members were surprised that this is in the newspapers. It was never discussed, and there was no move to introduce entry loads at all that had been specifically discussed in the committee meeting. Now, I don't think this kind of decision making is fair to the investors at all, right? Because Moneylife has taken the stand that we don't think decisions should be taken in a haste.
At all. In fact, transparency has always been an issue with Sebi's decisions. You were a member of the Sebi Primary Market Advisory Committee, and I'm sure you have something similar to share on this.
Exactly. I think we're talking about the composition of, first of all, how these advisory committees are set up and what is the level of transparency over there. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can tell you another story, another example. There was this gentleman who was chosen to be in the same committee that I was, that is Mutual Fund Advisory Committee, and in one of the meetings, in some context, he was very loudly saying that I do not invest in mutual funds. I don't trust them. I don't trust the market. I keep my money in fixed deposits. And here he was chosen to be a member of the Mutual Fund Advisory Committee. This is how they're chosen.
But what is the role of the chairman of these advisory committees? At least in the mutual fund industry, what was the role of the chairman?
Well, there are two things. One is the Sebi chairman himself was there in the first meeting, and then I think in one subsequent meeting. But our committee was chaired by Dr. Dave, who was the head of UTI at a time when UTI was not doing too well, and then eventually collapsed and had to be bailed out. Dr. Dave, I did not think was in touch with so many issues that were there currently being discussed. And the meetings were all conducted by Mr. Vaidyanathan, who was the ED of Sebi. And the current chairman is a gentleman from State Bank of India, formerly from State Bank of India, and he's a banker. I don't think he's a mutual fund expert either.
And it's the same when it comes to investors, right? There are just two investor representatives. The board is packed with people who are market intermediaries. Like I said, even in the primary market advisory committee where I was a member, the entire advisory committee is usually with Sebi officials, people who represent the corporate sector, or people who are paid by the corporate sector, which is lawyers, chartered accountants, company secretaries, and what have you. And there are a couple of token investor representatives. I mean, this has to change, right? We've been saying for a long time at Moneylife that this has to change. Question is, how should we do it? I mean, bring in some sunlight.
Well, one of the ways to do is to televise this, at least in Doordarshan. It's a government channel. And the way the Senate hearings are done in the US, many of these important decisions should be open for public viewing. And why not? We should know who stands for what and who's on whose side.
You remember this is what happened with the Sebi board meetings also? I remember that I had written an article once where I quoted something that happened at a Sebi board meeting. And the joint secretary in the finance ministry told me that it was wrong. And I pointed out that we as journalists usually decide that when something comes from the chairman or the head of an institution, especially a government body, even if that person is off the record, we take it that he is not going to misinform us. But in this case, it hadn't happened. And I pointed out that why don't you have a press briefing after the Sebi board meetings? And I think those press briefings that had been stopped for a while were reintroduced at that time. There was a big show about transparency with the agenda and minutes being open to public. But I don't think it's happening with any committee meetings, is it?
Not at all. It's not happening at all. And it should happen. And this is one of the things that we'll probably take up very strongly in Moneylife Foundation.
Let's talk a little about entry loads. I know
Sure.
that you've been looking at the mutual fund industry very closely. What is your view on whether entry loads, first of all, should have been scrapped? Do they require to be brought back? Or what is the alternative?
Well, I have a completely different view on this. I look at the overall math, and I don't think that investors are fools. If the mutual fund companies were doing a great job of managing their money, people would have found ways to invest in them. The problem with the entire discussion on entry load is that the whole point about investing in mutual fund, which is to grow your wealth over a period of time, that has gone from the spotlight. And people are not talking about what is really needs to be talked about, which is the performance as a whole of the fund industry. Have they lived up to the expectations? And has it happened that a fund company is doing extremely well over 10 years and investors are still not investing in them? That hasn't happened. We have 44 mutual fund houses in this country. Most of them do not perform. They have no touch with investors. They sell through distributors, as I pointed out. And the best ones are in fact getting money. They may not be getting as much money as they desire, but that is a function of two things. That is a function of market performance. Yes, there would be times when money would come in more, and there would be times when there would be less of inflows. But the fact is that mutual fund companies have to perform, one, and have to reach out and tell people that here we are, this is what we do for you, and this is what we have done so far for you.
So you're saying it's a catch-22. If you bring back entry loads, investors are hurt and they're going to go out, right? So the industry will remain small, if I'm correct. And unless the industry performs, they're not going to grow their assets under management because people would rather put their money in fixed deposits. Is that correct?
I think so. I think there's no need to panic. There are 44 fund houses. Nobody is selling and getting out. If things are so bad, there should be restructuring. We do not need 44 fund houses after all. The better ones are performing. Those who are performing are getting the money. So let's not panic. If the market gives 12.5% return from equities, is what Moneylife thinks, Moneylife Research thinks, 12.5 to 13% is what you're going to get. And if you already have 2.5% as your expense ratio, where is the extra money going to come out from? It will only come out from the shareholders, right? From the unit holders, right? And there's no scope for that. So the best thing that can happen is that the company should put down their heads and perform. That is the fund companies. And they should tighten their belts if need be and reach out to investors.
So essentially, to end this discussion, you're saying one thing, which is that if you want to revive the mutual fund industry, cut costs, cut salaries and perform.
Absolutely, 100%. And reach out to investors. Don't be a 10 crore equity company hoping to do a 50,000 crore business. Put in more capital, reach out the way life insurance companies are doing.
How do you mean reach out? What exactly would you like?
They have to have direct contact with investors. Today, investors are nowhere in the picture. They want to always talk to distributors. You've heard of these evening meetings where fund companies call 50, 60 distributors, and there is drinks and dinner and incentives. And that's not the way to reach millions.
But what about all these financial literacy seminars that everyone's conducting? Aren't they reaching out to investors?
But financial literacy is a big joke, isn't it? I mean, if you tell people things which are like textbook stuff and doesn't relate to them or their finances and what is happening to their lives, they're not going to pay attention to it.
So the bottom line, I think, is that you have to perform, and performance is the only thing that's going to get investors back. So if SEBI wants to panic in some direction, then I think it needs to call the mutual fund industry and tell them, improve your performance. The investors will automatically come back. You don't need to make them more literate. Thank you.
Or else get out of the business. This business is probably not for you. Thank you. Thanks for watching.